So, what happened with Starfire? Um, Starfire is a character that was a lot of people's favorites a long time ago, and then in the New 52, things seem to change, and there people have still kind of hung up on that. Let's talk about it. Hey there, this is Perch. Starfire. Starfire, a character from the Teen Titans, and I think probably the George Perez kind of era of that book gained a lot of fans of that character. Starfire became a DC character, and got a kind of somewhat complex origin story. Alien background, evil sister, uh, some kind of energy powers and everything else. And then also has the Teen Titans kind of version of her, bubbly airhead, kind of Starfire. But the real crux of a lot of conversation around Starfire comes in where the New 52 hit, and you had a version of that character with Red Hood that was, let's say, promiscuous is probably the best way to put it. Now, Starfire had always been kind of written as like not adhering to your human norms kind of dynamic, and that's fine. It was always kind of the charm of the character that she had that wide-eyed wonder type about her, and that's what got reflected in the Teen Titans or Titans Go, whatever, that the cartoon. What got reflected in the cartoon. You definitely had that dynamic there. And I think in the New 52, when they relaunched her, they wanted just to take kind of a different spin on that. The different spin on it was she was horny, like all the time. And she wore a, super tiny, just barely covering the bits, and also just undressing at random times. That was a version of the character that was, leaning into that. On my alien planet, we don't care about such things like modesty and nudity. I don't know why you humans are so hung up on that. Here, look at my breast. The challenge is that a lot of fans of the character who kind of had become endeared to that wide-eyed, more innocent structure didn't appreciate what they saw as, I'm pretty sure it's Scott Lobdell, the super porn version, because Rockford who can draw them big, as they say. They that was a one of the kind of the misfires of the New 52 in terms of somewhat ridiculous. I remember that first month you had that go on, and then you had the in Batman or maybe it was Catwoman. I don't remember which book. You had the super bat sex going on, kind of on the rooftop, where a lot of undressing. You definitely had a lean into more mature territory, let's say. But the character itself, she kind of went from there to being redeemed to some extent by the Palmettis, I think. Is that right? I'm not sure. They did a solo book for a while, and they still kind of leaned into that. Hey, I'm going to go skinny dipping for no reason, but it was seen as a more kind of back in the more innocent run of the title, more like her in the '80s, and less like the New 52 launch. And then, of course, in the Rebirth era, she's part of Justice League Odyssey, and is now evil and hanging out with Darkseid and everything else. But it's interesting how a pretty simple, I think, spin on a character. The part that I find fascinating on this is, having talked to people and read interviews and other things, the response that the fans gave over Starfire was a surprise, and it shouldn't have been. I mean, if you're going to have a character, suddenly run around naked and be drawn that way. I mean, in today's modern times, that's probably going to get some outrage, and it did. But what's interesting is you took a simple character trait, which was kind of innocence and I'm not going to pay attention to your human norms, and you turned it on its head. I mean, you took the same approach, but just in a very different way, and it got a dramatically different response. And so it got me thinking about the character in general. You think about characters that have gone through those kinds of changes, And what's interesting about Starfire is she kind of swung to one end of the pendulum, and now they brought her back. I mean, the character in Justice League Odyssey is I mean close enough to the Teen Titans version of the character in terms of kind of behavior and how she interacts and everything else. Probably a little bit more grown up, but still. And you generally you always see these changes with characters as they kind of reflect the times. But I'm trying to think of one that both had the same characteristics and also had the most radical change as Starfire. I'm not sure there is one that was both very different and completely the same all at once. That was a neat hat trick that DC pulled off there. But I'm curious. People had asked the question, what do I think of the character? What I think of that mix? I mean, again, it makes sense. DC at the time was going for a lot of, as I mentioned before, a lot of mature content, a lot of kind of sexed up content with the character, and so it's not particularly surprising that they would run this angle. Makes sense. It's not surprising that a few years later that was immediately reversed. It's interesting to think that that book was running parallel with Batgirl and kind of the things that Gail Simone was trying to do there. Just you had quite a lineup at old DC there for a while. But what do you think? Which version of the character did you like? Did you notice this? I'm really interested to hear from people who were big fans of Starfire in the 80s and 90s, and then this came out and it was just ruined your childhood. I'm curious if you exist and what you think of the character and what you think of that dynamic. But anyway, that's the story behind Starfire. Not a very long story, just that's the background of what happened. So if from time to time people ask, hey, what's the deal? Why is this character seem to have this the commentary seems weird around this character? Well, there's your background. That's what was going on. Leave me a comment. Let me know what you liked, what era you liked of the character, if you were bothered by all that or not. Like, subscribe, click the bell for notifications if you're so inclined. Follow me on Twitter at Comic Perch, and thanks for listening.